following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
So thank you all for coming. Our second breakfast in the last week relating to our city and its future and who will be leading our city and what the future holds for, I think, the place that we all love so much. It was a little over three months ago that Joe came to speak at ABNY and presented his thoughts on the state of education, citing the success of charter schools and the mayoral control. As we all know, these issues are critical to the city and to ABNY, and we're pleased that you have chosen ABNY again, Joe, to talk about other important issues that face New York. As we all know, ABNY is the place where we bring together all the stakeholders to talk about the issues and try to come up with solutions. Unfortunately, it does not seem that's the modus operandi down in Washington, and it's very frustrating to see what is going on down there, and hope that is a lesson for all of us in terms of how to govern or not to govern, as the case may be. So, Joe, we are very pleased and honored to have you here again to talk about your vision for the city. Ladies and gentlemen, former MTA Chair, Deputy Mayor, and Republican Mayoral Nominee Joe Lhota. Joe, thank you.
Bill, thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you, ABNY, for hosting this breakfast. New York City is the greatest city in the world, but I believe that even the best can do better and must do better. And that's what ABNY's been all about for the last 40 years. Bill, when your father started ABNY, he knew what was good for New York. As President Bill Clinton noted, Lou Rudin didn't want to do well for New York. He wanted all of New York to do well. And that's what this election is all about, making sure that New York can do well. And there's going to be a stark choice between myself and Bill de Blasio, my opponent. And I'm looking forward to this debate and the consequences it'll have for the city and all of its people. As Bill Rudin mentioned, I've spoken before ABNY. I was trying to count how many times. I think I came here as budget director, as deputy mayor, as head of the MTA, as a candidate for mayor, and now as a nominee of the Republican Party. And like I've always done before, I'll do it again. I'm going to put my Bronx roots forward, and most importantly, I'm going to give it to you the way I've always done it, and that's giving it to you straight. So let me start off with this confession. My name is Joe Lhota, and I am a fiscal conservative. I don't want you to be confused at all by other speakers who may have been here. Look, I am who I am. I have always been who I am, and it's a quality that has helped me both professionally and personally. It's allowed me to forge relationships with unlikely allies, as well as engendering trust and delivering solutions. Some people say my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness. I will talk to everybody and anybody, as both a candidate and I will as mayor as well. Frankly, I wish there was more people in politics with that same attitude, and I know New Yorkers agree with me on this. It's one of the things that has compelled me forward to run for mayor in the first place. And I actually think it's a huge difference between the two candidates that are running. My message today is not going to be one of platitudes or lofty rhetoric. I'm not sure I'm able to do that. But it's going to be not about providing a glossy shine over the realities of what a big spending and what I think an out-of-control government does to the people it claims to help. It will be about having the right policies and the right experience to deliver a city government that actually works for the people. Let's take a look at the facts. Since we began the war on poverty almost 40 years ago, we now have more people suffering in poverty. And why is that? The policies that were designed to create a strong social safety net are critical, absolutely critical for those in need. But the reality is they do nothing to advance people out of the situation that they're in of poverty and getting into the middle class. We have to go one step further. You know, a government that spends too much and taxes too much always threatens the ability to sustain the much required social safety net. And there's a reason it's called a net. When you go back and you look at what was written about it in the 1960s, they call it a net because they don't want anybody to hit the bottom. But like all nets, you don't want to get caught in it as well. No matter where I go in all 5 boroughs, people are telling me pretty much the same thing. They don't want to get caught in that net. They want to have opportunity. They want to be able to get out, and they aspire to all be in the middle class, and they all want opportunity. And there are 3 ways that we can accomplish this. First, we need to get the unemployed and the underemployed into good-paying jobs, great-paying jobs, and career positions. 2, we need to have a better education system in our city, both for our children and our adults. Not just, education, but also job training, to give them the skills they need to excel in the new jobs that need to be created. And third, and finally, we need a city that is safe and affordable, where people can live and have a great quality of life, and where businesses are allowed to grow and flourish. To build a city brimming on hope and opportunity, we must commit to invest in all 3 of these priorities: job creation, better education, and an affordable and safer city. Throughout the campaign, I've been calling on the need to further diversify our economy and for the need to foster an environment where businesses, both small and large, will create jobs. We need to be ahead of the curve in these emerging industries and bringing them to the city of New York. Look, we've seen what happens when you focus on a single industry, whether it's what's happened in Detroit with the dissolution of the auto industry from that great city, or here in New York City, where we saw during the Great Recession of a few years ago, what happens and what kind of economic displacement that there is when you have an over-reliance on a single industry. High-tech manufacturing, biotech, and life sciences are areas that are ripe to continue to grow in the city of New York. We are home to some of the best universities and the finest medical schools in the country, where cutting-edge research is taking place. Look at the Alexandria Center right off the FDR Drive on the east side. It's a great example of a nationally recognized and renowned company coming to New York and attracting large-scale anchor tenants like the pharmaceutical companies Roche and Pfizer. But it also fosters startups by providing them with low-cost lab space, and we need more of them. Just last Friday, I attended a high-tech job fair in Chelsea. I've got to tell you, it's the first time I've been to a job fair in 40 years. It's not a lot of fun. But in any event, I attended a high-tech job fair in Chelsea, and it featured entrepreneurs from all over the city of New York. And one of those companies, Sailthrough, it's a New York startup. 1 year ago, they had 30 employees. Today, they have 150 employees. And we need as many startups in the city as we can possibly get. All of these companies, when I talked to all of them, and I went to each one of their tables, and I asked about the jobs they were creating, I asked about the salaries, I asked about how the compensation works, and I was absolutely, unbelievably surprised, pleasantly surprised, at not only the competitive salaries they offer, but the greatest benefits I have ever seen from any companies in the private sector anywhere. We need to foster more high-tech companies in this city. I'm amazed by the entrepreneurial spirit of the youth of New York, and of all New Yorkers, actually. We need to unlock that potential by getting the government out of their way so they can continue to create these great-paying jobs that not only lift people into the middle class, but also put them on the path to a career. We need to stimulate manufacturing in this city, and we need to have a renaissance which will start with attracting new high-tech manufacturers. We need to lower the cost of starting up a business in this city, and we need to modernize all of our city regulations so that the permitting process is cleaner and neater, and there's a one-stop permitting process so cities can open up much faster. Diversifying our economy and creating jobs will enable our city to do more things for more people. My opponent's jobs plan, I occasionally will call him Bill, not Bill Rudin, but Bill de Blasio, who is a good friend, but we are opponents at this time. Bill de Blasio's plan, jobs plan, I believe leaves a lot to be desired. Look what happened, and consider Fresh Direct and the situation the city of New York was in with the 2,100 jobs that it has in Queens. Bill was prepared to let Fresh Direct leave and go to New Jersey. Fresh Direct was in active negotiations and had 2 offers from Governor Christie wanting them to move to New Jersey. Through the leadership of Governor Cuomo and Mayor Bloomberg, there was a solution found to move Fresh Direct from Queens with its 2,100 jobs to the South Bronx on property that had been owned by the city of New York. And Fresh Direct is committed to actually increasing their jobs by another 1,000 jobs, 1/3 of which would go to the people of the Bronx, the county, the borough that has the highest unemployment in the city of New York. For me, it was a win-win situation overall. It represented common sense government, smart governing, and to this day, Bill de Blasio still opposes what was given to Fresh Direct. Look, but what is good at creating jobs, there's no good in creating jobs if you can't find the skilled workers to fill them, which is why we all need to get very, very serious about education reform and job training in our city. Interestingly enough, the last time I was here, as Bill Rudin mentioned, I spoke at length about my vision for education and how we need to make it better. I believe then, as I do now, that education is the civil rights issue of our generation. Education is the key, I believe, to eliminating income inequality in the city of New York by lifting people out of poverty and restoring the great promise that this city has and will always have, an offering that it's made to people all across the globe. As I'm speaking here this morning, thousands of parents and their children and students are marching across the Brooklyn Bridge to City Hall to demand their voice be heard. They support charter schools, and I stand with them. My wife, my daughter are not with me this morning while I'm making this speech at ABNY because they are both marching across the bridge in support of the parents and the students at charter schools. And after this speech, I will be joining them in that march. Let's be clear. The parents and the children who are marching today are not wealthy. Wealthy parents don't have to march. They have the ability to afford, and they can afford to send their children to any school they want, and they do. The parents and children who are marching today are precisely those who want and deserve charter schools. They are low and moderate income families. These parents cannot afford a private school, and more importantly, they can't afford their local school either because their future is at stake. My opponent, I believe, turns a blind eye to the performance and the superior performance of many charter schools. And rather than ask how we can transfer their benefits to the regular public schools and all of their techniques, he stood outside a charter school in Harlem, and before all New Yorkers, he happily announced policies that I believe will end charter schools in this city. The majority of children in charter schools are from that other city that Bill de Blasio likes to tell tales about, and yet their voices fall on deaf ears, his deaf ears in particular. If you oppose charter schools and the programs and the other choices that are available for minorities and inner-city children and children of immigrants, you cannot call yourself a progressive. There's nothing more progressive in education reform today than the charter school movement throughout the United States. Now, there are areas where Bill and I do agree. We absolutely agree and understand the tremendous value of universal pre-K. They happen to be the very, very same values upon which charter schools and the charter school movement was built. And if you ask today what Bill's plans are for public education beyond pre-K, that's where our similarities end. My opponent, unfortunately, is for the same status quo system that I believe is failing our children. His solution is to put a moratorium on the closing and the reconstituting of failing public schools. I said to you the last time I was here, and I'll say it every day, I believe that it is completely and totally immoral to keep a failing school open. So with extreme positions like this on education, it's not progress. And I'm not going to constrain our children's education the way my opponent will to just going to the schools in the zip code where they live. As mayor, it's not just going to be about charter schools. Our public schools are going to need even more significant attention. And we need to fix it, and we need to fix it once and for all. All of our schools, all of them, need to be excellent schools. I will appoint a chancellor who understands how children learn. I will appoint a chancellor who has experience in the classroom, and I will appoint a chancellor who also has the unique management skills that they would need to reform our public school system. I will create new schools, both regular public schools and new charter schools, to give parents more options for all of our children. And I'll give our teachers, and this is the most important part of the reform necessary in our public schools. I want our teachers to be supported. I want them to be respected. I want them to have the dignity that they deserve. And as mayor, I will make sure that they have the professional development and the resources and the training, not just to be good teachers. I want them to be great teachers. And after they're great teachers, I want them to become excellent teachers. I also want to address something that I think is being lost in this entire debate about education. It's totally being put aside. We have to do something about all of those New Yorkers who've gone to New York City public schools over the last few years that may have gone through a system that has failed them, and that we have to provide them with the skills necessary to go beyond whatever low-wage jobs they have. This is a critical component of where my education is going to go, because I'm not just concerned about the students who are currently in grammar school, middle school, or high school. I'm worrying about those who have been in the public schools over the last 10 to 20 years. It is very important that we focus on them and we make sure that they have the skills necessary. We must right this wrong. That's why, as mayor, I will provide them with access to free, quality, online, remedial, and college education. This is where I'm supposed to talk about CUNY, right, guys? That's fine. Not only at CUNY, but across the country, every university has online courses. And no one could have dreamed of how advanced we've gotten and connected together. Maybe Steve Jobs, he might have been the only one who knew how we were going to be connected with tablets and other devices. There's no reason why we cannot offer folks who've gone to New York City schools free online programs to help train them, to help retrain them, and to help educate them, because the system didn't properly prepare them. I will work with companies and I will work with nonprofits here in New York and throughout the country, making sure that we can secure these mobile devices. And this is the most important part for me. For those individuals who are on public assistance in the city of New York, the hours that they spend learning on this new online programs that I will put forward, they will count against any workfare requirement. The most important thing I can do is prepare them to be ready for the 21st century. Our new diverse economy is going to require an affordable city, and we have the highest tax burden in the nation right now. We live in one of the few cities in our country that has both an income tax and a real property tax. Our government has doubled in size over the last 11 years. It's grown 56% over the rate of inflation. And as a result, our tax receipts, our fees, and our fines have also grown at these substantial rates over the rate of local inflation, all in order to achieve the requirement of having a balanced budget. For 8 years in council, my opponent voted every single time for fee increases, for tax increases, and he turned a blind eye to what these increases, pressure, and has done to the working and the middle class who have been making up the difference. You can rail today about all you want about how unaffordable this city is, but when you have been part of the problem, it's even more significant to understand that we have to fix this problem once and for all. If you're truly committed to making New York City affordable again, then we need to reform our unfair property tax system. Specifically, we need to reform the assessed value process for all classes in our real property system. We need to incentivize the construction of 60,000 new affordable housing units in our city. We need to preserve the affordability of 90,000 existing apartments threatened by deterioration. And we must encourage the private sector to build the next generation of middle income and affordable housing by working with the communities by working with their elected officials and all of the housing stakeholders in the city of New York to create new programs that will be a modern-day version of what Mitchell-Lama has been over the last 40 years. We don't have friends in Washington to help us anymore on this. We don't have friends in Albany to help us on these programs. New York City is going to have its own specific affordable housing program so we can allow more people to continue to live here and avoid the flight that people are talking about having. A working economy, a world-class education, and an affordable city would be rendered meaningless without public safety. We saw and seen over the decades how an increase in crime and fear can result in the loss of our citizens, and the loss of jobs, and the loss of confidence. 20 years ago, Bill, your father, Lou Rudin, and Mayor David Dinkins understood that and helped champion the Safe Streets, Safe Cities program that put more cops on the street and, as a result, was instrumental in making New York City the safest large city in America. Over the last few weeks, however, we've seen some headlines, some very significant and shocking headlines that recall part of the past that we should never see again in New York. One newspaper reported that shootings and murders were up double digits. Just this past Monday, when the NYPD put out its CompStat report, it noted that over the last month, rape has increased over 17% in the city of New York in a one-month period. 5 people were stabbed last week on the Upper West Side. A mother was attacked while she was pushing a stroller, and a 1-year-old child over Labor Day weekend was shot in the head while he was in his stroller. And just last week, an entire nation, if not the entire world, were stunned as a man who was trying to celebrate his wedding anniversary was brutally beaten by a biker gang. It was wilding by bikers in front of his family right on the West Side Highway. Look, during that time, I had suggestions as to how we should deal with these bikers. Bill de Blasio's answer to the bikers were he was going to dispatch the NYPD to sit down and have coffee with the biker groups. I'm sorry, this is naive and it's reckless. This is not how you keep our city safe. Look, I've never been a believer in coincidence. I've been pretty forthright about this. I believe Judge Scheinlein's ruling about stop, question, and frisk and the very ridiculous bills that have been passed by City Council are emboldening criminals as well as handcuffing the police department. I believe, and the New York Times poll last week showed this, that New Yorkers agree we need to continue proactive policing strategies that make us safer. There is no room in this city or this state or this country for racial profiling. And racial profiling, those who do it need to be disciplined and may need to go so far as be separated from service. There's no room in this city for any racial profiling. One thing I do know about policing strategies is that they need to evolve. Criminals' behavior adjusts to the changes that are made by police forces, and the NYPD must always be one step ahead of the criminals. When I'm mayor, I'm not going to send the police department to sit down and have coffee with criminals. That's not what you do. Police officers need to be sent to arrest criminals. We have the most diverse and professional police department in the world, and I give Police Commissioner Ray Kelly strong kudos, and I compliment him for what's gone on in the department in its diversification and how by the time we have the next class going through the academy, it'll be over 51% of the NYPD will be minorities. And Ray Kelly needs a lot of credit for that. I actually believe that candidates for mayor should not use Ray Kelly as a punching bag and subject him to character assassination, nor should they do that to the brave men and women who keep us safe every day. Instead, all of us, both candidates, all people in the city of New York need to say thank you for the great work they've done and how they've made this city so much safer. In the final month of this campaign, 28 days actually, my opponent will try to label me, as he has been doing, and say I don't understand the problems of inequality or the families who barely make ends meet. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and where I come from. Most of you know my dad was a New York City cop, but what you don't know is that he became a police officer when I was 10 years old. My parents were teenagers in high school when I was born. It's a miracle they're still together as a loving couple. But when I was growing up, I remember long before my dad was able to get a job as a cop, he held 3 jobs. My mother had 2 jobs. And like many people today, we were just scraping by. I remember my parents coming home each night, and back then in the 50s, you didn't get a paycheck, you get cash. And I remember when they'd come home every night, my mother would take that day's wages and start putting them into different envelopes. One labeled rent, one labeled food, one labeled for gas. The telephone company was one of the largest bills at the time. It's amazing how things have changed. But utilities, and then all the other expenses, because we lived from week to week on the amount of money my parents were able to bring in. Look, this was my first lesson in budgeting. I remember it as clear as can be. It helped me when I was the city budget director. It helps me today have a perspective on those people who are trying to lift themselves up into the middle class. Quite honestly, I didn't go to an elite elementary school in Cambridge. I went to school in the Bronx. And while I was there, I have always supported the New York Yankees. I have always rooted for New York, and I always will root for New York. I will fight for New York, more importantly, and for all New Yorkers. I do believe my opponent's plans are going to hurt the very people that he wants to help. So if he wants to go toe-to-toe with me on inequality, if he wants to go toe-to-toe with me on affordability, or about understanding how to make ends meet, I welcome it. I've lived it, and I am the only candidate in this race who has the experience to take it on. Some call this a change election. Some call this a change election. And believe me, it will be change. The next leader of our city must bring the right kind of change. That doesn't mean change from independent leadership to be a mayor beholden to special interests. That doesn't mean change that tears down any of the improvements that might have happened. And it doesn't mean change that reverses the policies that have made us the safest large city in America. This election isn't about resetting New York. It's about unleashing New York and allowing every New Yorker the right to reach their full potential. It requires putting aside party labels. I will select people on a basis of their credentials and their ability to do the job necessary, not on political party affiliation. I am proud and fortunate. I've worked in both Republican and Democratic administrations, and I believe my service helping this city get back up after 9/11 or get back up after Hurricane Sandy a year ago are my proudest professional moments. My record is clear, my leadership is tested, and my policies are proven. In the end, my vision is not of a city that merely survives, but a city that soars. I want New York to be a city that has been a city that I've always known, a city of opportunity and a city of great expectations. And we all share the same goals, all of us in this room, all throughout the city. We want a vibrant city moving together in a forward direction. We are 5 boroughs, we are one city, united and strong. Thank you very much.